Good morning and welcome to Yeshiva YouTube Daily Double. Today we'll be finishing the 17th parak of Masechet Shabbos, starting the 18th parak. The last Mishnah in Parak Yud Zayin, Mishnah Ches. Kol kisoi kelim sheish lahem beis achiza nitolim b'Shabbos. This parak has been talking about moving kelim on Shabbos. Here we're going to talk about moving the lids of kelim on Shabbos. So if it has a handle on top of the lid, you can move it on Shabbos. I'm Rabbi Yosef Medvar Amur Mekisei Karkal, Mekisei Kelim Benkach Benkach Until B'Shabbos. Now the Mefarshim explain, and Rabbi Yosef explains that there's three types of cases. You have pots that you cook with, right? Everyone agrees whether there's a beis achiza or not a beis achiza, whether there's a handle or not. There's no problem moving it, right? It's used to cover a pot. Under certain circumstances, you're allowed to have a pot cover on Shabbos. You're allowed to have a crock pot cover. So there's no problem because it's mukhan, right? The question is, and everyone agrees that when it comes to a covering of a well or a dus, which is a above ground well or something like that, which is exactly part of the ground, right? That you can only move it if it has a beis achiza. If it doesn't have a beis achiza, then it's like part of the ground, and it's like soser. It's like you're just or binyan or soser. It's like you're destroying something. You can't move things in the ground. Ish binyan. Even though there's machlokas, yesh binyan b'kelim and binyan b'kelim, by karka, everyone agrees yesh binyan b'karka. That's the case where binyan and stira apply, right? When you're building something on the ground, that's the real binyan, the commercial building on Shabbos. The machlokas, the Mefarshim explained in Rabbi Yossi and Tanakama, is a case where you have things that are attached to the karka, right? You put kelim that are attached to the karka, you cement them in the ground or something like that. So, and you want to put a covering on that. So, according to the Rabbanon, it has to have a beis achiza. According to Rabbi Yossi, his Meikol says it doesn't have to have, because it's not similar to the karka. The fact that it's attached to the ground does not make it part of the karka. There's no problem being a stira. And according to the Rabbanon, another fact that it's attached to the karka is, right, does make it like part of the karka, and therefore the yesh binyan stira, unless it's a beis achiza where it's discernible that the lid is not part of the bottom part of which is attached to the ground, so therefore you can move it because it's not binyan stira. That's the conclusion of the 8th parak of the 17th parak. Let's start the 18th parak. Mishnah Aleph. Mefanin afilu arba v'chamesh kupo shel tevim shel tfu amnei orchim amnei bittul beis hamedrash. You're allowed to move 4 or 5 boxes, whether you have straw or you have some grain. Now, this is things which is not processed yet. It's obviously muksa because in order to process, you have to grind it up. So it's food, right? Technically, it's meichel behema. You give straw to your animals, but most people are using it. The Gemara says muchan la'adam lo muchan behema. If it's normally meant for people, you're not going to give it to animals. So it's considered muksa in some regards. It is food, but it's food for animals. However, you're allowed to move it if you don't have room for guests. You want to get it out of the sarach makomo we talked about in last parak, or bittul beis hamedrash. You want people to have a beis medrash to learn. You're allowed to get if you have the storehouse. Avalo is a but you can't completely remove everything. 4 or 5 is lavdaf. You can even remove more, but you can't remove everything because you're going to unveil the ground, and the ground a lot of times was made out of dirt. And when you're taking it out, you might smooth out the ground, which is a malacha of chofer gumos, which inside a house would be a malacha of binyan. The fan in truma tahora udmai ma'aser rishon la trumasa ma'aser shem hakdish niftu. That truma ziyavash neshu ma'achal aniyam. If you have truma tahora, food which is truma, now it's regular food, and it's truma which is tahor, which is fit for kohan. Even Israel can move it because you give it to a kohen. Demai is something you're not sure if trumas ma'aser is taken off, so you can give it to aniyam, right? Well, Ma'aser Rishon, Shnei Trumasa, Ma'aser Rishon, it took off Trumas Ma'aser and Truma Gadol, right? So you're right, the Levi could eat it. Ma'aser Sheni, the Hektish, and the Ma'aser Sheni, Hektish that were redeemed, right? Because if they weren't redeemed, you have to bring them to the Beis HaMikdash, and only Hektish you can't use. You have to go to the Beis HaMikdash. And Ma'aser Sheni, you have to bring to Yerushalayim. Right now, you're far away from Yerushalayim. Trumas Yavesh, beans which are dried out, right? Because even though most regular people wouldn't eat it, you can feed it to poor people, so therefore it's muchan because it's food. Last pair we talked about kelim. Here we're talking about food that's roy or not roy. Avalo as hateva v'lo ma'aser rishon shel trumasa. You can't move, even if you want to make space. Sarach makomo, you can't move tevel. Tevel is trumas and ma'aser that you piled in grain that you piled on the floor, right? and you made it into a pile, but you haven't yet taken off Shuras and Maisros, because Tevel you can't eat. You have to take off Shuras and Maisros, and take off Shuras and Maisros on Shabbos is Asr Derabanan. V'lo Maisar Rishon and Nishur Masa, Maisar Rishon, where the Shuma Gedola or the Shuma Maisar weren't taken off. You can't move that, even in the Saraf Makomo. Why not? Because you can't, again, you have to take off Trua before you can eat it. Otherwise it's Tevel. V'lo es Maisar Shnei Hekdesh Shal Niftu, Maisar Shnei Hekdesh that weren't redeemed. Right, the Gemara talks, you try to redeem it, but you didn't redeem it in a successful way. So you have to hekdesh. You can't. It's for base on mikdash. You can't ever use that. Ma'aser sheni, you have to bring it to Yerushalayim, and presumably you're far away from Yerushalayim. V'lo es haluf, v'lo es achardal. Luf is a type of, they have a luf of sponge, which I use in the shower, but it really comes from the luf of vegetable, which is like a very mushy type of gourd or cucumber. V'lo es achardal, not mustard seed. He says, the luf of vegetable, you could move because rich people who have pet ravens, right? If you're a rich person, you have a pet raven. Maybe it means a parrot. I don't know. You could feed them. It could be food for your animals. And we don't pass on the shul. We pass in that most people don't have orvin, don't have ravens. And it's only a food that's fit for ravens, so it's not even good for Michael Behema. Stay tuned for Yom and see, where we discuss the difference between moving kalim, which are seemingly not roy, like a hammer, which is malachta le'isr, and food, which is not roy in these cases, right? It's tevel or something like that. Even l'sarach makomo is not mutter. Klisha malachta le'isr is mutter l'sarach gufo l'sarach makomo. And it comes to food that's not roy la'achila, right? Sarach gufo presumably would mutter. Sarach makomo not mutter. What's the difference in ochel and kalim? And I'll tell you, Mitzion coming up next.